The programme you're about to watch was recorded 15 months ago. We've not been able to show it until now for security reasons. Not security reasons concerning Revelation TV, but because of safety concerns for the person and the family you're going to see and hear in this interview. Let me tell you how it all came about. 15 months ago, we received a phone call in the Revelation office from a gentleman who asked us if we could promote a peace rally that was being held in Bradford the following weekend. Well, at the time, there seemed very little that we could do to promote the peace rally. It was far too short notice for a TV station. The caller explained to me on the phone how the peace rally was in aid of a man and his family who lived in fear of their lives in Bradford. The background to the story was that the man had been brought up as a Muslim, but had had a dramatic conversion to Christ. And because of his change of faith, he had faced shunning and harassment from his community, bricks through the windows of his house being burnt down, cars damaged and written off, and finally, a beating which had almost taken his life. I wanted to know more and asked if the gentleman would be willing to tell his story on camera. The caller said he'd see what he could do. It so happened that I was filming at a conference in London the following weekend. Any chance of him coming to London, I asked. I promised to make space during the day to film him if he came. And so it was the following weekend, during a break in filming, I saw this man hobbling towards me on crutches. He introduced himself. He told me his name was Nissar Hussain. What you're about to hear is his story. But I started by telling you that for safety reasons of Nissar and his family, we've not shown the interview for 15 months. So what has changed to make it possible now? Just over a month ago, Nissar and his family had to flee their house in Bradford for a safe house somewhere else in the UK. The only way that they could pack up all their belongings and leave was to have a police armed escort back to their house and for the police to guard them and their house as they collected their belongings together. This is the way that the ITV local news reported that story.
11:30 this morning, police cars arrive in convoy on an unremarkable street in the Manningham area of Bradford. The second vehicle is Nissar Hussain's. He's first rendezvoused with the armed officers at a nearby police station. He says he's been told there's a real threat to his and his family's safety. Under police orders, the family are forced to wait in their car. The officers, carrying handguns, enter the family home. They're there for 5 minutes.
Well, the armed police have just emerged from Nissar Hussain's house. We understand, ostensibly, they've checked whether it's safe for him and his family to go back in. These are extraordinary scenes on a suburban street in broad daylight in Bradford.
Nothing has prepared us, myself and my family, for this, actually. Although we're extremely grateful to the armed police for the escort and the safeguarding measures they put in place, I could never have imagined in my wildest dreams that it would ever come to this, actually. And I'm going to back that thing in here now.
For Nissar Hussain, today is the end point of what he says is an 8-year ordeal for his family after converting from Islam to Christianity. 12 months ago, he was savagely beaten outside his house by a gang wielding a pickaxe handle. The attack left him with a fractured hand and shattered kneecap. A fortnight before that, Calendar reported how a mob had attacked his home, throwing fireworks and eggs. Just 2 in a series of incidents which he says are all part of the same hate campaign against him.
We have to get out of Bradford as soon as we can, never look back, actually, because our lives are not safe. And, you know, actually, and this has been allowed to go on for far too long, actually, where, I say, we are not comfortable living here with my wife and my children, who are equally traumatised, and so we just have to vacate as quick as we can and never look back. But again, you never think that it would happen in a so-called democratic, free country such as ours.
It's really bizarre, and it's quite scary to come to this, to leave our home and leave Bradford.
After collecting their belongings today, the family have now moved to a safe house provided by the British Pakistani Christian Association. It's now set up a snatch squad, in its words, to rescue other threatened Christian converts, so-called apostates.
Clearly, there have been other people who've converted from Islam to Christianity, and I know there have been problems, but some people have managed it without this level of antagonism and harassment. Is there something special about Nissar Hussain that has attracted this violence, these threats?
He's spoken out. These other victims, they go into hiding, they flee, they run away. They allow the anguish to continue for other victims. But Nissar didn't want that. He wanted to stand up for justice to make sure other apostates one day might be free of this persecution.
West Yorkshire Police today insisted it wouldn't tolerate hate crime, and a spokesman said the force was disappointed Nissar Hussain's family had decided to leave Bradford, as police and other partners had been working to try and resolve the situation. It said investigations are ongoing into the attacks and into allegations and counter-allegations following local disturbances. As for Nissar Hussain, he says he's done nothing wrong. Tonight, he and his family face trying to start a new life at a secret location outside Yorkshire. John Hill, ITV News, Bradford.
It's staggering to think that of all this has been happening in the United Kingdom. We're supposed to be a multicultural, multi-faith nation able to get on with one another. Nissar has not committed any crime. The only reason this is happening is because he's chosen to change his faith and become a Christian. All he wants to do now is to tell people about the Lord Jesus Christ. After I'd met and talked with Nissar, a few days later I rang the man who'd originally phoned our office. I said to him, "Can you confirm the things that Nissar told me over the weekend are true?" He assured me they were. I want you to know, I also believe that what you're about to hear is true. Over the last 15 months, Nissar's story has been confirmed to me in many ways. That's why I'm telling this story today. Be prepared to be shocked and challenged as you listen to Nissar's story. Well, I want to say welcome to you to another programme. We talk about the niceness of Britain and the way that we welcome people from all races and all creeds and all cultures. We talk about how we have this great Christian heritage. But I want to show you a newspaper headline. And I don't know if you can see it from there, but it says, "Christian convert dad beaten up for his faith." And then underneath it says, "The attack on the father and five was not in Pakistan," or we could have said in Iraq or Korea or other countries that we think it might happen, "but Bradford in England." I want to introduce you today to Nissar Hussain, who's with me in the studio. Nissar, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. If you just sort of hold up your hands, people will immediately begin to see what we're talking about. You literally have come out after how many weeks in hospital?
Just short of 2 weeks.
Okay, and to get here, you've got a crutch that's over there as well. You were pretty badly beaten.
Yes, sir. I sustained a fractured patella, which is a kneecap, and a fractured hand.
Okay.
And sort of severely bruised and beaten all over.
And the reason for that is because you're a Christian.
I'm a Christian convert from a Muslim background, yes.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning a little bit if we can do, Nissar. You've been born and bred in this country?
Yes, born and raised here in Birmingham.
Okay, and what was home like?
Home was home actually. You know, I enjoyed a wonderful childhood. It had its moments, you know, actually having to conform to the Muslim way of life, which seemed quite
Where did mum and dad come from originally?
Mum and dad come from what we'd say Mirpur of Pakistan, Azad Kashmir. Actually, born and raised here in '65, and had quite a wonderful upbringing. There were issues in my childhood days of early, if I can use the expression, be quite blunt, Paki bashing. You know, actually, in the very sort of early sort of mid-70s. But you know, actually, we learned to sort of get on with it. You know, we realised there was ignorance around, even at that early age. However, you know, we had a sense of Britishness. We were taught to take on Britishness. And
was it quite a strict Muslim home?
My father himself, no, because he worked for a car manufacturing sort of in Washwood Heath, Birmingham. he'd be off with his mates, you know, the local pub, enjoying a drink, you know, a few, maybe a bit more than a few, but yeah, and actually on a Saturday morning in the local bookies, having a bit of a bet, you know, and if anybody sort of visited us, actually, my mum would sort of then push me out the house to go and collar my dad, either in the pub of an evening or, you know, sort of early afternoon in the local bookies, you know, going into these smoke-filled places crammed with other sort of bookie wallers, you know, and having to sort of hold him out and say, so-and-so's here, do you want to come home, Dad?
So many people in Britain would say they were Christians and it was in name only. Is that where you were, or was it a bit more than that?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say my dad was very liberal, nominal. Even today, you know, majority of Muslims are nominal. And so we had to conform to the pattern of being a Muslim, and that would be, you'd have to sort of come home from school, have a quick bite to eat, and then you'd just go off to a local mosque to learn Quranic scripture combined with Urdu as a second language.
Mm. Well, your journey was one which led you out of Islam,
Yes.
and in time into Christianity. Can you just, in your own words, tell us that story?
I actually came to faith through a school friend of mine who was a bother boy, a skinhead, openly racist, you know, young man, and actually hard as nails, and actually very streetwise, and we wouldn't see him for very, very many months in the school classroom. He would go away, he would work the bouldering centre, actually, and then at some point he would get collared by the authorities, be brought back to school, and on such an occasion, actually, around about the age of 15, actually, he's civilized in his dress, in his manner. The ear piercings have gone, the Mohican hairstyle has gone, the tattoos have been covered.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it was such a, you know, a contrast, you know, such an extreme change, actually. You know, and his face to me seemed almost angelic, and I was blown away by that transformation. And I've come to realise, upon speaking to him, he's now very approachable, actually telling me he's born-again Christian. And I was absolutely flabbergasted. I said, what's a born-again Christian? You know, and then he explained to me. And we'd have these very lengthy chats. And I was just drawn to him. He's just unbelievable, you know. And eventually, after some weeks, he said, can I impart to you a Gideon pocket New Testament? Which I took with a bit of apprehension, because we were taught to believe that, you know, it's a lie, it's been changed, and it isn't the true, you know, sort of gospel message and such like. But nevertheless, I did sort of take it, and I tucked it away, and away I'd go to my home and sort of hide it in my bedroom, and of a night time I would read it with great fervour. And it was while reading the Gospels that I actually came to faith. I realised that Jesus Christ was the Son of God who came into the world to die for my sins. And even at that age, I was very conscious of my sin, actually. And, you know, we would be going to mosque and sort of speaking, you know, joking in a foul way, or other kids, actually, and then come sort of fasting times, you know, what you'd do, you know, you'd put on sort of the traditional shalwar kameez, but underneath you'd have your tracksuit bottoms on and your t-shirts and whatever, and as soon as you'd sort of join the evening prayers after the fast was broken, and you'd kind of go on sort of to the back, and sort of as people are sort of prostrating, and sort of before you knew it, you were out the back door with a group of mates and sort of, you know, having a whale of a time, you know, and so I was very conscious that you know, I was a sinner, actually. And,
so how old were you when you made a commitment to Christ?
15.
And how long after that was it before you came out in the open and declared it?
Well, unfortunately, what happened was that before long, my mother discovered the Gideon New Testament.
Mm-hmm.
As mothers do, they come along and they sort of, you know, sort of
tidy your bedroom,
and sort of maybe, you know, brush your hairline or whatever and tuck you in. And I'd fallen asleep with the New Testament sort of laid on my chest, actually, and she obviously took it away. And all I remember was the following morning, she's obviously gone to my older sisters who have said to her, look, not being able to speak English or well, read English actually. And they would have said to her, this is a New Testament. And as a result of that, she was tearing and screaming the place down, threatening to expose me to my father. And that really instilled the fear of God in me, because being a big man, 6'4", sort of typical sort of Kashmiri big fella, and ruled with a rod of iron. And after that, I fell away from fellowship, and I fell away from meetings, and so I fell away from meeting my fellow Christians, actually. And so I would say I was under the title of a backslidden Christian.
Right, okay, you'd become a believer and almost straight away backslidden.
Yeah.
But your journey developed.
I remember my father thereafter, I don't know what my mother told him, but he seemed to have been actually quite sort of stringent, making sure that myself and my younger brother, who was a year younger than me, were actually, and sometimes walking us to the mosque and actually sitting with the imam and just sort of making sure that we were there, and sort of we were, doing our duty, learning the Quran and such like. And he even was sort of at one point expressing so much upset to the imam, actually. So he had his concerns. But what I can say hand on heart, despite going through the rigmarole of reading the Quran, in my heart of hearts, I was a Christian. I believed in Jesus Christ, who died for my sins, was my saviour, and that was a very, very strong conviction. And actually until 96, if I can fast forward very quickly.
So how many years have we gone forward now?
Well, we've gone sort of forward from sort of around about sort of 81 to 96, that
Right.
my brother Iftikhar died very suddenly at the age of 29. And actually, you appreciate it was the most traumatic
Yes.
experience of my life. My father was semi-retired in Kashmir, and when I had to break the news to him, actually.
So your father had gone back?
He was semi-retired.
Right.
And actually, at which point, when I broke the news, his strict instruction to me was, you must bring your brother's body back here for burial. And as a sort of dutiful son, I thought fine. And actually, as I said, it was the most painful and sort of traumatic experience, having to prepare a 29-year-old brother's body, put it in a casket, and sort of accompany it back to Pakistan.
Right.
For burial.
And so you went back, and the funeral took place, and you saw your
Yes,
father again, and all the family.
Yes, I was there for 3 weeks actually, and no sooner did we arrive that they like to get on very quickly and bury the deceased. And it was whilst they were lowering my brother's casket that I really looked down actually at his grave, and I said, Lord, I've been ducking and diving for a long time, and I think it's a matter of time before I will join my brother someday, and I feel that I should make it right with you if you'd accept me, and I'm going to serve you in the best way that I can. So I made a commitment of faith at that point.
Yes. So soon after that, you came out in the open and declared yourself a Christian?
Yes, especially after my brother's death in 96. Actually, that's when Iftikhar died, and you appreciate again, there was such a deep void and a pain in my life, and I realised it's only the Lord Jesus that could fill that. I approached a friend of mine at work at that time, who was a committed Christian, a young man, and I expressed to him, look, I know you're forever, mentioning your faith and such like, and your church, but can I say that I am a Christian, in heart, and this is what's happened. I've suffered this tragedy, and I feel I'd like to attend with you to
Was that
to
hard
church.
for you?
No, it seemed the natural thing to do, the right thing to do, to get back with fellow believers and in church, because I sensed that I deeply needed to have this void filled and be comforted, and I knew that only Christ could do that actually. And so my friend at work, he was beside himself, actually, absolutely elated, and he couldn't believe his ears. And I started going back to church with him, actually.
All right.
Yeah.
So suddenly on a Sunday morning, your neighbours could see you and the family, was it, going to church?
Well, no, sir. I mean, what happened actually, my wife, I mean, here I am now, disappearing, going to church, well, disappearing twice in the morning and in the evening. And this happened for about 4 or 5 weeks or so. And then one afternoon, upon my return, she confronted me and said, "You're going to church?" And I couldn't believe it. And I was just stumped. And I said, "Yes." And she said, "You're a Christian?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And her immediate reaction was one of shock, horror. She then pulled my 4-year-old son and my 2-year-old daughter away from me. And she said to me, "Do not touch my children and do not come near me." And I just remember just sat there absolutely broken, not knowing what to do here, away from my extended family, you know, my parents, my siblings in Bradford, thinking, "Lord, do I now suffer the fate of losing my wife?" And so I just sat in my brokenness, and I said, "Well, Lord, you know, you need to do something here, because I don't have the energy. You know, I'm still suffering the pain and loss of my brother, and I don't feel like I'd live if I was to lose my wife and my children." And of course, it reflected on me when I went the following week or two to church, and I remember a sister who I come to know, and she asked me, "Is everything okay? You don't look particularly good." And I said, well, no. She was an older, mature sister, so I confided in her what I was going through at home, and I feared losing my wife and my children. And she said, "Please, can you not try to bring your wife over to our home, maybe, and let her experience that, you know, we're not, I don't know, perhaps these white English devils, or she will get a sense of our family and the grace of God in our household." So I said to her, you know, "Thank you very much, you know." So I went away, and I was trying to persuade my wife. She wasn't particularly communicating with me at all, but as a subservient wife, was still obviously looking after me and sort of cooking and the rest. And eventually she agreed to come along with me to meet you know, the family, this invitation I was given. And I was watching her and observing her actually throughout the time we spent there, and she had an amazing time actually. And then in the course comes towards the end, they said, "Would you like to meet so-and-so? They are Pakistani Christians. There's a Pakistani Christian fellowship here." And I was absolutely dumbfounded, and I said, "What?" Because prior to that, I thought I was the only Pakistani Christian, believe it or not. And, you know, I was the only convert in the world. And she said, "No, you know, there are some families here. Please, may I introduce you?" And I looked at my wife. I could see her ears just prick up, actually. And then we soon, after that initial meeting, we met a first Pakistani Christians I ever met in my life.
Right.
And then we ended up going to the fellowship, which really resonated with my wife, culturally speaking as well, and such like. And thereafter, I remember some weeks later, a pastor near Easter said to me, "Can you not sort of bring your wife and family along? Actually, I think it'd be good just for your wife to sit in the back and just let her see, you know, what we do here in church and such like, and it'd be a celebration time for her as well." And so I then went away and started working on that, and said, "Look, bro, the pastor has said, look, you know, he wants to invite you. Would you just want to come along? There's no obligation." And given her curiosity, you know, she then came with me, and I couldn't believe it actually towards the end of the service when the altar call was given. The kids were at creche, and I looked around. I couldn't see my wife anywhere, and next thing I saw, I was just, you know, as I say, I was completely blown away. And she's at the altar, and she'd confessed Christ, and she accepted Christ.
Wow.
Yeah, just very amazing.
What an amazing story. But I mean, whilst your story has got such positives, such wonderful ending through your testimony, you equally in this country have experienced the most horrendous persecution. Tell us about it.
Well, we became a complete family as converts, if you like, and so I remember expressing this to my friend actually, that I felt I couldn't keep this secret anymore. And one of my closest friends was a Pakistani Muslim chap, and when I expressed to him, look, I've converted to the Christian faith, he absolutely recoiled in horror and said to me, please do not knock on my door again.
Really?
Yes, he told me as a matter of factly, you are, I considered you a member of my family, another brother, but now you've betrayed the faith, and I actually don't want to see you ever again. And as a result of that, it then went out like wildfire.
So he then passed the news on?
Certainly, with other friends and people I knew in the area. And then actually you become quite shunned, you're despised, rejected. And then my wife started getting issues whereby some of the Muslim women would approach her at the school and say, well, we hear you're a Christian, and which she didn't deny. Why don't you wear a miniskirt and a blouse? These were quite sort of so-called religious women wearing this sort of full regalia. Some were from different communities, the Pashtun community, who have seen themselves a bit more stringent, by wearing the niqab and hijab and such like. And my wife would say, no, not at all. I have a heart change, but look, I'm born and raised in Pakistan. This is my makeup. This is who I am. This is my heritage. I have nothing against modesty, blouses or whatever, but that perception is very wrong. And as a result of that, what happens is that the young men became very hostile. It always starts off with name calling, trying to treat you as though you're some kind of second-class citizen, as per their understanding.
You really have betrayed the community, have you? Is that how you perceive?
That's right. According to them, not only betrayed the community, but betrayed Islam, betrayed the Prophet of Islam. And so therefore, we are, according to Sharia stroke Muslim law, we're classed as apostates. And therefore, under the blasphemy stroke apostasy law of Pakistan, which resonates here, we become subjugated, and we become, as I say, a target.
It's hard for us to understand that in this country, because if somebody wants to be a Muslim or a Hindu or a Roman Catholic, then you can just change from one to the other, and nothing's done about it. But for a community in Pakistan, it just really is anathema. It doesn't happen, does it?
There is no middle ground. It came as a complete shock to myself, a real shock to the system actually, because as you appreciate, growing up in this country and being British, despite having a heritage and a culture, you have this wonderful respect for other people, for their religious rights, freedoms. You have every respect, regardless of one's creed and colour. So it was a real blow actually, even to myself. I mean, we realised that there was going to be issues where I was going to really be shunned and cut off from my immediate family, i.e. my parents, my siblings, and of course the extended family. But I never, in my wildest imaginations, realised it was going to be so terrible actually by fellow Pakistanis, my own countrymen, if you like.
And it hasn't just been name calling, which in itself is bad enough.
Yes.
But it's been physical violence as well.
Yes. From the name calling, it then becomes a bit more brazen, and then you're confronted by groups of young men who have absolutely no respect for you and sort of actually spitting, cursing. I was being called all sorts of names, a Jew dog, actually, and I couldn't apprehend the contempt, the venom that they were spewing out. And then before you know it, I had a car rammed, actually attached to the property, had another car torched outside my home. Your house then becomes a target. Graffiti, using very descriptive, very terrible language actually, and sort of what we would say hate crime and such like, and then bricks are going through the window, and you are then actually being intimidated, harassed. Your home becomes a prison because these people are acting with such impunity and with such lawlessness that you think, well, you know what, I might as well be in Pakistan, and the police have completely failed. If I give an example of our previous home that we were forced out of, they never once acknowledged it as a hate crime, never mind religious.
Did it make you think about giving up your faith?
Not at all. Yeah, if anything, it made me dig deeper in my faith. I could say the same for my wife. My children obviously were very young too, apprehended, but we were constantly living in a state of fear, apprehension. We were suffering acts of terrorism when you're having your car torched 3 o'clock in the morning and actually screaming in such horror, seeing several foot flames shooting up from the car. Believe me, it's not a good situation to be in.
And where was the Christian community at this point? Did they get involved? Were they helping you, supporting you?
Yeah, unfortunately, that is another issue. We seem to have been between a rock and a hard place, that the fellow Christians cannot fathom what converts. I mean, to be honest with you, it was quite a bit of a learning curve for ourselves, given the depravity and the depth of what we were going through. But certainly there is a real misunderstanding from my fellow English Christian brothers and sisters to try to understand what it is for myself and my family to come from Islam and to sort of embrace Christianity and to lose everything and be dispossessed and then to suffer violence.
And it reached such a point for you that you had to move house, is that right?
I had to move the house, absolutely, because I was given an ultimatum on one occasion
This is by some...
by ringleader,
Yeah.
and we were literally being harassed, intimidated on a daily basis. My wife, as soon as she opened the door to go out to the local school with the children, being harassed, intimidated, sworn at, complete sort of human degradation, you know. Actually, almost at times followed in the car, just sort of literally crawling behind her, and just verbal abuse and intimidation. And on one occasion I came back from work and this ringleader was sat there waiting for me, and he approached me in no time at all and said, "Why don't you just move? We despise you, we hate you, and I'm going to burn you out of your home. You've seen what we've done to your car, and now we're going to burn you out of your home." And I remember saying to him
And this was Birmingham,
This is in Bradford.
Bradford?
Yes.
Okay.
Around about 2002.
Yep.
And I said to him, "Well, you know what? If it's the Lord's will, then you burn me at my home." And immediately I came indoors very alarmed and distressed by this very real threat. And I actually got to speak to a sergeant. I said, I want to speak to somebody at a higher level. And eventually I was put through, and I expressed to him what had happened. They had a very long history of all our issues, you know, over the years. And he said to me, he started giving me statistics, and these things very rarely happen, and all the likes. And he said to me very bluntly, "Stop trying to be a crusader and move out of your house." And
The police said that
the police sergeant said that to me. And unfortunately I didn't take his name, but it's well documented at the time. And I then realized, my God, you know, we are on our own here.
So Nissar, you mentioned that there was a community of Pakistani Christians. Was it you who'd been singled out because you were a recent convert, or would all of the Pakistani Christian community be experiencing similar to a...
No, this is very unique to the convert. And although there seems to have been an acceptance of generational Pakistani Christians, but it hits such raw emotions and such a raw nerve when it comes to the convert from Islam to Christianity, actually. And just to say very quickly that they did carry out that threat. They broke into a house next door, and it was vacant, had been for some time, and they deliberately set fire to the upstairs front bedroom window, and I'll never forget the pitiful picture when our house became smoke-filled with pungent, thick smoke, and my kids, hysterical, huddled in a corner of a room, coughing and spluttering. And actually, while I was frantically ringing the fire brigade, actually, thankfully, they came within minutes, and actually 4 fire engines and floodlit the sort of whole of the house, breaking doors, windows, hose pipes, engine noise, and I can't express to you the distress of my children actually whilst these group of Pakistani young men came and thought it was very funny and having a good laugh actually. So it was not long after that we then were literally forced out of our home.
But I can imagine this, people who are watching today saying, but this is Britain and we have a good police force, and you know, if things like that happen, surely you were able to identify who the ringleader was. Didn't the police arrest them? Didn't they end up in prison?
It seems to me actually that for fear of upsetting the Muslim community and whatever other thoughts the police might have had actually, that we were completely on our own, and this is what's more disturbing actually, that the police didn't take the appropriate action. There wasn't one charge against any of these young men.
Here we are, fast forward to today.
Yes.
You had this terrible
which suffered for over several years. The children couldn't sit in front of the bay window. We didn't know where the next brick was going to come flying from. Despite a 7-foot fence built around the back garden, they didn't play for almost 5 years because bricks, missiles were being lobbed, verbal abuse while I was at work. And so we had no choice. We were forced out through the fire incident. I couldn't, trust these people ever again to sort of allow us to live peacefully, and we got out. And things were fine in our new address. We were utterly broken, traumatized. We were in need of healing. We needed to rebuild our lives. And we were absolutely fine in 2 years there of living in our new home. And then
this was another part of Bradford?
This was another part of Bradford, yes, completely, yeah. And actually, I was then approached by the Dispatch's documentary makers and who said, look, we are doing this piece. We realise there is an issue with converts. There's a trait up and down the country. However, yours is quite a serious case scenario. Please, would you be willing to talk? And because I felt extremely passionate about, being a British chap myself, why should we have suffered this thing in the first place? As a result of that program being aired, September of 2008, there's a family some doors away from us actually who took offence, and next thing I know actually that we've become shunned. The word has got out in the local community, so we're now shunned, maligned, and it's just got from bad to worse actually.
3 weeks ago you were attacked again.
Well,
very badly beaten.
That's right. We actually endured years of being maligned by people on my road, up to the sort of school playground, a Church of England school, primary school, and actually I was told that by another school parent, do you know that you're labelled as somebody who's anti-Islamic, you're on YouTube, you're outspoken, and I was mortified actually, and this particular school parent, being a Muslim chap himself from a Pashtun background, said to me, I have no issue personally, but this is what's been said about you, but I've checked you out on YouTube and there's nothing to suggest that you have said anything about the Muslim faith. And so, in a nutshell...
and you haven't, have you?
No, sir. You appreciate that. Coming from the background that I do, my parents, my father did pass away in 2011, actually, but prior to that, my parents adhere to the Muslim faith as my siblings, regardless of whether they are nominal or otherwise. My wider extended family, you wouldn't want to, it's not particularly Christian-like to cause any offence, and we just love them in the love of Christ, as any Pakistani stroke Muslim chappie, and so And as a result of that, actually, what happened is that it's culminated since last July. So, in effect, we were down the road where we were at our previous address, where I've had my car smashed 6 times, 4 times outside my home address. And despite trying to park it in a safe area away from my home, I've been followed, I've been clocked, and they've smashed my cars again. And of course, there's been much issues going on within the area. Again, intimidation, harassment, and yes, it's culminated to the point where I almost lost my life, actually. 17th of November, just going to my car at 5 o'clock to move it. And would you believe I've been parking at the police station for very many months for peace of mind and safety.
Yes.
In the visitor car park, that without any warning, a car just screeched to a halt. 2 thugs jumped out the back, and within a second or two, they've used a pickaxe handle, swung for my head, and instinctively I've put my hand up to protect the blow from hitting my head, and my hand has literally exploded with the force of this hit, and I've reeled backwards. My heel has caught the curb. I've then fallen full force, hitting the back of my head against a wall behind me, leaving me completely concussed, and they've literally pummeled me, which ended up in my kneecap being fractured, and then I was still able to wriggle around, move around, and I'm just very grateful and thankful to the 2 Polish gentlemen, my ex-neighbours who happened to be there, who came running to my aid, and literally these thugs then made haste and drove away. Yeah.
Nissar, I can imagine people who are listening to your story absolutely horrified at what they're hearing. What can Christians do? What can people who are listening to this story do to help not only you, but those who are converts from Islam and other faiths who maybe are getting similar kind of persecution?
Certainly there has to be a great understanding by the wider church, especially the Anglican Church in particular. They really have to support the converts. They then become that family, that support, that protection. And Christians really need to understand that that convert has lost everything, as I expressed earlier, your parents, your siblings, your wider family. There are repercussions, sometimes very severe. Thankfully, death is not associated with converts too often in this country. There have been cases over the years, few and far between, but as far as I'm concerned, it's still far too many. And there has to be a recognition that there is no middle ground in Islam by Christians, but also they need to raise the bar. They need to raise these things with those people in authority, governments, to really get the Muslim leaders, whoever they are. Everybody seems to be a leader in every mosque, actually. However, they need to get them to understand this is uncivilized, it is un-British. They enjoy every freedom that the West affords them, every benefit, religious freedom, and they have a rightful duty, living in this country, to convey the same to the convert.
Well, Nissar, I want to thank you so much for coming today. I know that physically it's cost you a lot to do that. I want to thank you for having the courage to share your story. And I do believe that the Christian community, certainly those who hear this broadcast, will want to begin to pray and to support you. So bless you, and thank you so much indeed. If you were watching at the beginning of this programme, you'll know that the interview was recorded some 15 months ago, and we haven't been able to show it until now for safety reasons. But I'm delighted to say that on the phone to me now is none other than Nissar Hussain, and he's going to give us an update on what's been happening in his life since that interview was done. Nissar, thank you so much for talking to me.
You're very welcome. Always good to hear from you, Gordon.
Well, and you too. Now, Nissar, we're able to show the interview now because you've moved from Bradford into what we call a safe house. Can you just tell us what's been going on in your life?
Well, there's a lot to say, but I'll try to, given the time limitations, but certainly I can tell you that we finally have made out to green pastures. We are safe and well, and we had absolutely no alternative but to move because of imminent death threats to myself and my family.
Dear, dear. But thankfully now you have been able to move and you're in a different part of the country, and you've been there, I think, for a month or two now, and so far so good.
Yes, sir, that is true, yeah. We're certainly sleeping better.
Okay, that's good. Nissar, your family, your dear wife Kubra and your children have taken this journey with you. And they must have suffered and struggled so much, and particularly as they've watched you. How have the family managed to cope?
Well, I'm just so grateful to the Lord for their tenacity and their, remarkable strength, actually. That, as you say, they are traumatized at this moment in time, but we're also very grateful that we no longer have to flee or look sort of over our shoulder and think how we're going to live our lives, So it really for us is just, we're just so, we just can't thank God enough, and the move actually that has really lifted our spirits actually.
Mm-hmm. Nissar, the things that have happened to you are horrendous. And yet the scriptures talk in terms of forgiveness and holding out an olive branch towards people who do things to us. How do you feel at this moment of time?
Yeah, this is our duty to forgive. It's extremely hard in the face of adversity. When it comes to your lives, your wife and your children, your family. But then we realize, don't we, that as born-again believers, that we give God thanks in all things, in the good times, the bad times, and of course the Lord Himself came to maturity through sufferings and through trials. So we can align ourselves with Him, and we can endure.
Nissar, here we are 15 months on from the things that you talk about in that interview. How can we pray for you?
Yeah, certainly pray actually for our continued safety and welfare, our healing. You appreciate you don't come away unscathed. We are suffering actually the after effects, if you like, the trauma of all this. I myself have been classed with post-traumatic stress disorder, which is, humanly speaking, it's going to happen, and it will affect us in some way, shape or form. And we're trusting God for healing and for our future lives. So if you can kindly pray for that, actually. And of course, there is so much of the constraints involved as well, which people don't seem to understand, that, you're now forced out of your property, the bills will have to be paid. And of course, I'm jobless at the moment, so just pray that God's will be done in our lives, and we'll be in a better frame of mind, and these things take time, and we'll get back on our feet and continue to press on.
I mean, you say there, Nissar, that you're trusting in God. Has it dented your faith at all, what's happened to you?
Not at all, not at all. I've seen the Lord's goodness time and time again, where the bishops have failed, church have failed, but He never fails actually. And just when you feel that there is no way out, His grace just floods in, and you just are propelled on a different level, and He comes through ways that we can never imagine, or understand.
It's a remarkable story, and the trials and tribulations that you faced are fearful. And yet we're commanded to reach out to our neighbours, and our neighbours include in this country those who are of a different faith. How, if people who are watching have got people in their community who at this moment of time are Muslims, how would you say we should be sharing the good news? How do we do that? What is the right way to share the good news of Jesus Christ?
You know, certainly we mustn't exclude anybody. We must include them in our society, in the love of Christ, through his love. You know, where we feel that, given ourselves, there's been this instant contempt. And of course, I am classed as an apostate. However, we learn from the scripture that though men revile us, you know, just let us, through our good works, glorify God. And of course, we need to pray much that there is a turnaround in this society, in this community. But we must be reflective of God's grace and God's love.
One of the things, Nissar, that you've begun to do is to talk about your story in a number of churches and communities. If people want to get in touch, is there any way that they can do that with you?
Yes, certainly, actually, you know, through the very kind support of the Barnabas Fund, and also I'm aligned with the British Pakistan Christian Association, and they're very welcome to contact either of those organisations, and the message will get back to me, actually.
Okay, and I would say that similarly to our viewers, if you're wanting to get in touch with Nissar, then if you ring our office, then we'd be pleased to be able to pass your details on to Nissar and his family. Well, Nissar, it's been a journey that you've gone on these past few years. Who would have imagined that day when you said, I'm going to trust in the Lord Jesus Christ, that it would be quite as traumatic as it's been? I just want to thank you for being faithful, and I want to say thank you for sharing your story with us today on Revelation TV.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless. Bye-bye.